They learn as we learn, bud.
Right?
That's what this whole show's about.
Welcome, guys. Thanks for joining us for Noah Asks About Wrenches.
Noah asks about wrenches. Noah, what's your favorite kind of wrench? Do you have a favorite kind of wrench?
Like aesthetically or usefulness-wise?
Either one.
Because I think aesthetically, like a pipe wrench just really has that like key elements of like being a unique wrench. But usefulness-wise, probably like a socket wrench. That's probably the one I use the most.
I like using a socket wrench because it feels nice. You're just like, and you're like, yeah, just, doing this thing. I'm out in the shop. But really, you're like tightening like the screws on your like IKEA bed or something. But, which actually, no, those are mostly like Allen keys, aren't they? Listen, now I'm saying.
I know.
They got me saying these fellas out there, man. They're tricking my mind into saying Allen key. A fucking hex key, am I right, bro? That was a high five that Noah and I just did.
Yeah, it is. It was not a pathetic self-clap.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. Not at all. No, I always liked 3/4 crescent wrench. Just like the standard, like got the C on the one side and like the circle on the other. I like those, like aesthetically better. But usefulness, I like forget what the size is. I think it might be the one I'm looking at actually. It's like it's an 18-inch, 2-inch to 1/16 wrench. So used for lighting.
But is it a crescent wrench? Just like the adjustable
It's
ones?
an adjustable one, yeah.
Okay.
It's got that little worm thing.
Those ones never like catch right for me. Like I feel like even if I tighten it as much as I can, it just like doesn't like work the same way as like a standard crescent wrench that locks in and like has a specific size.
It just takes a real gamer to be able to do it.
Right.
But yeah, it's the one I used when I did stage lighting. You just keep that bad boy in your back pocket and you're up like hanging from wires all day, just cranking shit. But anyways,
yeah,
on.
We got a real podcast going on.
Do we?
Today, Noah's asking about burnout. But I should introduce my co-host as always.
It's me.
The Joey.
It's the Joey.
The Joey.
Right. And who's hosting this amazing show? What's that sweet, sweet voice you hear on the other side?
That's
not me.
Noah. Just Noah.
Just Noah. You can find him on Twitter at 404 page not found, because this guy's off the grid.
Yeah, I am. I'm a wild man.
What a boy.
You can't hold me down.
So Noah, what do you know about burnout?
I got some personal experience.
Yeah?
I've done some jobs.
I don't know.
I've been at school.
Dude, I feel like you don't do enough in your life. How do you be?
Ouch.
How are you?
Damn.
How do you get burnout? But explain burnout to a guy who thinks that burnout is another name for the racing stripes you get in your shorts after a scary movie.
Is that what it's called?
No, I think those are called blowouts. You blow out your pants, maybe?
Road rash? I don't know.
I'm about to start Googling names for
but you're going to start seeing some stuff you really don't want to see.
I really don't. I just want, there should be a way to like tell Google you don't want like the suggested images at all. You just want like definitions.
Right? No, I know what you're talking about though. It's just like the little strip. Like
I never did it when I was a kid. I mean, I learned to change my own diaper. I was a very self-sufficient child.
Oh yeah? I'm proud of you.
Yeah, man. No, it was great. Hard out there on the streets for a little Mexican bean baby. I decided I should grow up white so that I wouldn't be discriminated against like my brethren. But
your brother who is white.
Yeah, my no, I was talking about metaphorical brethren.
Your cultural, ethnical,
the Hispanics.
Yeah,
the Hispanic people. I'm the worst. Anyways, let's please change the topic to anything else.
So burnout. I wrote down the actual definition. So burnout is a state of emotional, physical, mental exhaustion caused by excessive or prolonged stress. It occurs when you feel overwhelmed, emotionally drained, or unable to meet constant demands. So I feel like the American education system can
like check off some of those boxes.
Yeah, for sure.
No, like, and especially I was of course playing before. Noah does a lot of things in his spare time. He watches a lot of anime.
I took a nap today at like 11 o'clock.
We got up this morning to go to the gym. We went to the gym, found out the gym was closed, came back. Noah took a shower. I made him breakfast, and then he laid down on the couch and went to sleep. It was like 9 or 10, I don't know.
But it was an uncomfortable sleep. So like really it was work in itself trying to fall asleep.
Yeah, and that's just like, that just puts a lot of stress on your body.
Yeah, I know. And then it gets me overwhelmed and then I can't do more things.
Yeah, no, you wake up and you're just like, oh God, I shouldn't have done that. I'm all stressed out.
Yeah, so I should take a nap in my actual bed now to like make up for it.
Really just like catch up on that sleep debt. But no, like being in college, you do a lot of that overexertion, especially in these last few weeks because we had, actually I don't know when these are coming out, but like, back in May when school was ending, you get a lot of work piled on you. It seems like last minute. in all reality, it's kind of like that work where they told you about it at the beginning of the year. And if you're like a good student and actually read the syllabus, which I've never met anyone who like actually does that. But like if you do that, then you know about it. But if you don't, then they're just like, oh, hey, by the way, your project is due in 2 weeks. And you're like, what project?
Okay.
Like, it's on the syllabus. I'm like, oh, I didn't prepare.
Yeah. Well, even me, I had some classes that told you like once a week for the whole year that we're going to have this big old paper. You should be prepared for it. They didn't put any sort of like, what's the word, rubric for it, any guidelines, anything like that. So it's like, you're going to have a 7-page paper. I'll tell you how to do it 2 weeks at a time. So I could write 5 pages and then like maybe it's worthless.
Yeah, do
maybe
like
it's
rewrites
great
or something.
Yeah.
My favorite thing that I was told in my acting class was that it's actually easier to write and act within definitions. Like nobody wants to have like those bounds. Everyone's like, yeah, I want to be like free to do things within my imagination or whatever. But like having those like structured walls to like work within, like those confines actually make it easier to work around and build stuff, which is why, you know, those rubrics are always handy. I've only used them like twice. I think most of the time I just like go off the top of the dome because it's the night before. I'm like, you know what? This this right here about to be a good ass paper.
I took an improv class once. I'm sure I can write a paper tonight.
I can do that. Do you know who I am? I went to state champs in high school for improv. I'm the best. I have a podcast, sir.
Yeah.
That's how I start out every paper. It's like Joey Moreno, Psych 101, to whom it may concern. I own a podcast, so everything ahead is fact and law. And then I just get an A.
You should have the pleasure of reading my script, my paper.
The pleasure of reading my blog. Enjoy that.
To whom it may concern, I copied and pasted this from my blog and because it's gold.
Have you ever done that? Have you ever copied and pasted from a website?
From a website? No.
No?
Because websites, I don't know, I don't trust their writing. Like, I read it and I'm like, I could do that better.
When I was in high school, I did it more. Where I would copy like pretty much word for word from a website, just like Control A, Control C, Control V. And then I would just go through and just change keywords in it and be like, we didn't learn about this part, so I'm just going to take that out because it's like too much information. And then eventually it would be my own paper just by the like sheer fact that I like weeded away everything that wasn't.
Yeah, I think at very least I typed it myself, even if it was really close. And then I'd be like, well, if I'm typing it, I'll definitely like put in my own idiosyncrasies and stuff.
Yeah, I definitely, you know, at the end of it typed most of it. But no, I was I didn't like studying. And I've never learned to study correctly. So I think this year's the first year I actually like did proper studying before an exam. I like did the whole 9 yards. I don't know how other people did it, but somebody introduced me to actually just making your own Quizlets. Yeah. And so I did that, and then there's this cool little tab on there that's learn, and then you just like, it's like get all of these things right twice and then be able to type out the answer, not only just choose it multiple choice. And then it's like, hey, you mastered it. Like,
so you wrote all the questions, all the answers, and then it just kind of gives it to you in like a little test format.
Yeah.
Make sure you learned them all.
And then it's like, it's really cool because you can actually share editing ability with like other friends that are in that class, and so they can add terms that they want to know.
Oh, that's cool.
And then it's like, oh, hey, I didn't know that term and now I do. And so that's like comes in really handy.
For sure.
So yeah, you know, unsolicited advice there. Enjoy using a
study
Quizlet.
Tips.
Yeah. This is Study Tips with Joey and Noah, the coolest podcast on the internet where we teach you how to get good grades.
Hashtag hella sponsored.
Hashtag stay in school. Hashtag
we might drop out. No. Hashtag do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah, just continually just drop in like hints at like dropping out so that Amy, when she's listening back. Hi, Amy, by the way. Nice to see you. I'm sure you look great today. Hi, Jeff. Wait, does Jeff listen to him or does Amy?
I don't know. I think Mom listens to him. Dad might like be around when they're getting listened to.
Oh, she's just like, okay, Google, play.
Or if I talk about him, then she'll like tell my dad that I talked about him. And be like, okay, now he can listen to it.
Oh, see, now Jeff knows.
Yeah, now he knows because we're saying stuff.
Jeff is like, oh, wait a minute. What's the lowdown? What's this kid saying about me?
And he's like been doing it a lot because we say his name over and over again. He's like, what's going on?
Somebody's talking about me. I got us way off track.
Yeah, we did.
So, burnout.
Prolonged stress, you know, exhaustion. But I did want to ask, like, there's burnout, and then I feel like there's, like, a boredom, a, like, lack of meaning in a project.
Yeah.
Would you say that's the same thing? Would you call that something else?
No, in my research, Noah, I came across some very prestigious studies on YouTube that were that were just videos that I watched. Definitely not like an hour before we started recording this. But no, most of them like broke it down into like 3 different parts. And it was like that lack of meaning, questioning whether or not it's worth it to continue
the value of whatever you're doing.
Yeah. And then in the end, just like ultimate just writer's block, or just that feeling of kind of helplessness that you can't get out of this rut that you're in. And what's interesting, I didn't even think about this before because I've heard a lot about burnout just like on the YouTube sphere and just with creatives in general. People talk about having career burnout with like office jobs and like business management and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like you could be like a journalist or an analyst or marketing specialist, whatever. It's like you get into it and suddenly you're like, oh, well, maybe this isn't what I want. And one person, I don't remember who it was, he broke it down into like 5 stages of basically realizing that you don't want this thing and then trying to make it work and then just ultimately ending up exhausted because you just don't fit right here.
Yeah,
So-
you're trying to put a square peg into a round hole, and it just wasn't going to happen.
And you've just been like shoving it there for years. So you believe that's where it went. But in reality, it's like, no, this isn't quite what you should be doing. It's kind of weird to think about it in that kind of abstract concept of this isn't what I should be doing, when really in life there's no technically right or wrong thing.
Yeah, because people can adapt and are fluid. So theoretically, they could fit anywhere.
Yeah.
But obviously, everyone has their like natural mold.
I think it's what's kind of cool about like humans in general is we're all just so different, but we all have like our own like specialties kind of deep down. But to answer your question, yes, I think that fits right in there. Like the idea of like feeling like bored. I think that might be kind of where it starts, is like losing that like passion or recognizing that you lose that passion.
Yeah, because when I was looking up burnout, literally all the articles I saw were like career burnout. Like that's like the key term that it goes with. And so I know it's a buzzword on YouTube kind of right now with some of the bigger creators, like losing views even though they're trying harder than ever. And so it just like creates a struggle. And then
Yeah. Well, it's not even like just that. On the YouTube sphere, what they're talking about is creators that are, especially like vloggers or daily gamers or streamers. It's like they've been doing this for countless hours for the last like 3 or 4 years. And they just like run out of things to do. And they have this massive audience and this massive like draw to want to create because they have this like obligation they've built in their head that they have to have something. It has to be new and it has to be groundbreaking every single time. But eventually that's not going to work. I believe in the YouTube sphere, they're talking about like that kind of thing.
Yeah. But I feel like in the same time, these people who they were doing it for years and they were able to do it for whatever reason. I think that reason is they start out with like 1,000 views, then 10,000 views, then 100,000 views, then 1 million views. And you're like, okay, this work is clearly paying off. People are watching, like my dream is coming true. And then after you start to plateau, that's when they're like, I am working just as hard as ever. I've been working for a long time, still trying to create these ideas, and it's not paying off in the same way.
Yeah.
Is it worth it? Am I doing something wrong?
Yeah, I think that's definitely could be like
Combination of the two.
Yeah, and I think it's hard to just continue doing stuff when maybe even like you reach that height and you're like, oh, well, where do I go from here, kind of thing.
And that's got to be the same at like a regular hourly job where you move up to middle management and you're like, well, I'm not going to get promoted unless the guy above me dies. And he's a 40-year-old marathon runner. So I guess I'm just going to be stuck here forever.
I've been putting iodine in his coffee for the last 4 months. That guy just keeps trucking.
Oh, man.
But it's just like, I swear to God, I'm just making him stronger. His hair's just like coming in thicker than ever. He was having male pattern baldness.
Yeah, I started looking up effects of iodine.
It's just like,
I don't know what's happening.
his fingernails are so healthy. Yeah, no, in those situations, it can be hard to deal with it. So what are ways that you have dealt with burnout? And what are ways you felt it, I guess?
So I guess like where it comes from for me has usually been school. I don't think I've had a job that's like strenuous enough to require me to be burnt out. And I think that's because with jobs, I can leave and I don't think about it anymore. And I know with some jobs that's not possible, but with my hourly part-time jobs and stuff, it's been really easy just to be like, it's done, my day is over, I can separate myself from that, and then I'm free, and then that doesn't get me to burn out because I have all this free time. Whereas school, it's like, you go to class, so that burns you out a little bit, then you have to like worry about homework, and then so even if you don't do the homework, then there's the stress behind like not doing it or having to do it later. So there's always like residual issue, I guess. For me, it's really take a full break. Like I said, with homework, if it's still in the back of your mind, you might not be getting that break that you really need, and you might still be stressing. And then when you come back to it, you're at the same level you were before, even though you took your break.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Some of the studies I saw were like, they specifically tried to narrow it down to being in jobs like nursing or like business management, where you're just like high stress the entire time you're there, and then you're not able to shut it off once you leave, and how that affects your sleeping habits. It was kind of cool because like a lot of the studies I saw for this kind of correlated with the studies that I saw for our sleep episode, which, sweet plug. If you guys haven't heard it, you should go check it out. Just saying that people who have done these kinds of jobs for years, like they were tested when they were 20 and then tested again when they were 25. And there was like significant decay in the frontal lobe and like cognitive centers of the brain for decision making and problem solving and stuff like that. Not getting sleep and being stressed for all this time is like actually taking a physical toll, which could be correlated to burnout for people who like in their 20s feel like they have to have this drive, do the long hours, can't sleep as much because they're all just like trying to get ahead. And then once they've done that, say they've achieved their goal, like these YouTubers per se, like say they start when they're 20, and then some would even argue that like having that kind of career is even more taxing because you're just like constantly trying to figure it out, whereas like in a desk job you're like you've got that kind of separation for something.
Yeah, once you're trained, then you like have your time, you get used to it, you learn the system.
Yeah.
Whereas like YouTube or film, like the system is always changing. There's always different tastes.
Yeah, you have to like modify yourself like every year. And like some of the better channels and like companies are setting yearly or bi-yearly
rebrandings.
Yeah, like not even like necessarily as extensive as a rebranding, but they just like change their tactics just enough to keep it fresh. But yeah, you have to change so much, so your brain is just like constantly going. So you look at like PewDiePie, who started when he was, I think in his 20, I don't know how long he's been doing it now, but he's almost 30. His mind has to be just like so fried because he has to think of all of these things. And I'm sure it's much less now because he's got people who help him. But for a long time, he was just a solo creator. Yeah, so like that cognitive breakdown is something that is a physical ramification that could indicate burnout is a real condition that can be not necessarily treated, but like recognized with medical diagnosis. Because I believe in the United States, burnout is not considered a real illness, I guess.
Yeah.
But over in, I think it's some parts of Europe, it is considered a medical thing. I can't think of the word right now. You get what I'm going for.
For sure. And so I guess what we were talking about, like, would you say burnout's almost like a symptom of progress and like growth?
I think that it could be seen as that. I think burnout is more of like a symptom of not taking care of yourself. Yeah, no, it can be linked to sleep, like I said, like lack of sleep, which of course that was like one study, and that like one study doesn't like really show a real correlation, but there were some pretty strong indications that it is linked. Because I think you could experience burnout without actually making progress. There's tons of people who try and start their own businesses or whatever, and they do it for years and years and years and years, and they never get too far off the ground, and they just like plummet. And that's because I think they probably reached that level of burnout. You can only take so much failure, right? In theory, I feel like I could only take so much failure before eventually it's like, oh, well, why am I doing this? That first kind of like initial symptom of burnout or whatever, you start questioning if what you're doing is the right thing. No, I don't think it is necessarily a symptom of success, but it could be. Definitely have a correlation in some of those people for like just working
those
hard.
Business people and like those nurses who like do their job really well and just
do their job really well, but in doing so they don't think of themselves. It's like that selflessness that kind of leads to your own downfall.
Yeah, I was wondering, do you think people can cause burnout? Either like exemplify it in a job that you're already feeling burnt out, or can you be burnt out from like a particular person?
That's a good question. One of the studies I saw was talking about how just like interacting with new people in a positive way can help relieve some of the symptoms of burnout. And I think that's for people who get in kind of like that like almost writer's block loop, where they just think if they lock themselves in a room for long enough, they'll be able to produce their 300-page manuscript. And that just like destroys your body and like mind, because like you're not letting any new thoughts in. You're just kind of like sitting in there and sweltering in all of your, for lack of a better word, in all of your failure. So like for some people, getting out and just socializing and doing something that isn't work can help revitalize like someone's mind, which I hella get behind, because I'm very much wow, what's the word?
Social creature?
Yeah, I'm such a social creature. Whereas like some people are a little bit more introverted. So I don't know. Could you speak to the introvert kind of side of things?
Yeah,
Because I know we get a little bit different in that.
That's something I asked about earlier, kind of like the burnout versus like fatigue, general apathy. Like that's kind of where I want to diverge the two, if they were different or if they were the same. Because I feel like that's what you can feel towards people, is that like a little exhaustion, but they don't like stress you out enough to like ruin your life, like raise your cortisol levels, but you just might not want to be around them for a given period of time or something.
No, are you trying to break up with me?
Yes. Right here on air.
Oh God.
No.
I mean, I guess I'll go. I don't know. See, like I have trouble speaking to that because I don't really get like that burnt out on people. I guess I could get tired of specific people. I did have an instance over a year ago. I don't know. I had an instance a while ago where see, burnout, man, it affects your memory. No, I had an instance with a friend where I was like interacting with them like all the time, like every day. It was constant enough that I felt like I couldn't get a breath. And so I suppose in that sense, but I don't know if that would be considered a form of burnout. Because I think people talk about burnout, they're generally speaking in like a creative or business sense. Maybe creative isn't the right word, like a career-oriented sense of the word. But I think we could like modify.
I mean, corporations are people too, so.
I mean,
in the eyes of the law.
I don't know. Okay. Yeah, I think we could look at it in a sense for like friendships. You could probably get burned out on people.
Yeah, you could like overdo it and then possibly just want to separate ways.
Yeah, and I think it's different for a lot of people too, because I have a higher tolerance for dealing with a lot of people, just because I like to be social and I like to meet new people and I like to go out and like party and be like, hey, what's up, everybody? My name's the Joey, and then like nobody here knows you, and I'm like, cool, I'm just gonna go to the back, and you know, whereas people who are a little bit more introverted, like I'm sure you'd have a much better time just sitting at home with just a couple friends rather than going out and meeting new ones, and just like watching anime or playing video games, which I also gain joy out of, but it's like a different kind of. I think I would get more burnt out being with just the same people all the time than if I went out and met new people. And I don't know if you feel the opposite about that.
Yeah, I might feel the opposite.
Yeah.
Where if I meet the same people like regularly, then my friendship with them will go stronger. And if I just kept trying to meet new people and failing, that would like bring me stress and then burnout. But yeah, something that made me think about that was like divorce. Like those rates are relatively high, and those are because people get married and then they're with each other relatively constantly, and they're possibly trying to make square pegs fit into round holes, because for a marriage that doesn't work, would that be a symptom of burnout with a person?
That definitely seems like it'd be an example. What's the divorce rate now? Like 51%? Something like that?
I don't know if it's quite that high, but it's high, yeah.
Yeah, like with that kind of stuff, it's easy to imagine like getting fed up with them. Like, and I can't imagine being in a relationship that long just purely because I'm young and I haven't been in that. But like my mom doesn't have like a whole lot of friends. Like she's got maybe one or two. I just tried to convince her to listen to our podcast the other day, so I really don't want to put her on blast and just be like, yeah, my mom's lame, has no friends. Yeah, you hear that, Ginger? But like, yeah, like it's just she doesn't have a whole lot of people that she talks to outside of her husband. So in that scenario, it's very easy for me to imagine getting burnt out on that, unless you like really, really like that person, which I assume that's what marriage is. But even so, like no one else forever. I think I would just be overcome with the existential crisis that would like set me off, and which is like, oh, it's just you and me and no one else until I die.
Yeah, and I don't think it's like just your mom who does that. Like I think of my parents, and I don't think of like them having like a ton of like really close friends. And then like even I look at my brother, like now that he's out of college, he's meeting less and less people. I can't just like think of people that he meets on like a regular weekly basis or something. And I think just as adulthood comes along, you lose those opportunities to just be around people constantly, like school and parties and different things like that, community events, like dorms is a place you'd meet people. And I feel like you lose a lot of those. So if you didn't make a bunch of them early on, then it'd become hard to maintain those.
Yeah, it gets harder. I just looked this up here. The state of California says that according to statistics, about 40 to 50% of marriages in the United States end in divorce. 40% of first marriages end in divorce. Too.
Okay. Yeah, and then I know it goes up after that.
Yeah, and then 72%, just fun little factoid, 72% are filed by women.
Huh.
So they're just like, I don't need no man, which you don't, ladies. You're strong, independent. Divorce your man. That's the driving force of this podcast. We're trying to get you to divorce. Noah asked about divorce.
Even if you're happy, just divorce. We're rooting for divorce
like
right now.
The slightest thing. Your man just keeps leaving the toilet seat up.
Right.
Get that bitch annulled or divorce.
Did he buy a $60 video game? Get him out of there.
What a loser. What kind of loser sits around and plays video games all day? Am I right, ladies?
I am right.
Yeah, no, burning out on people would definitely be that. It's interesting. We're kind of like stretching like the bounds of what would be considered in that. But
I just feel like when you put in words like, oh, like you're questioning whether you want to do it, you're trying to make it work, and that makes you exhausted. It brings you stress, like thinking about it. And then there's like relationships can do all those things too. So why would that be a different word?
That's fair. That makes sense. Perfect sense there. Wait, you won me over, Noah. I don't know what else to say. End of podcast.
Noah's right. That's all we needed to hear, folks.
That's the new name of the show for season 2. Noah's right.
You'll hear it at least once an episode. He'll probably say it 4 or 5 times, but
I'm not gonna say it as much as you want me to. As much as I'm sure you'd love to hear it.
Oh, for sure. We kind of know like what causes burnout and like what its symptoms are. How does it manifest itself in you particularly?
For me, it definitely comes in that feeling of like helplessness and a little in like depression. But I also had this interesting relationship with creating stuff. I can get burned out easier if I'm doing stuff for other people. So if I'm editing promotional photos or a short film or something like that, when it's not something for me, I get burned out. But as soon as I like take on a project that is specifically like my child, I immediately feel reinvigorated. And it's just kind of like interesting, like love-hate relationship with like creating things where it's like, oh yeah, I love the act of making this new thing and bringing it into the world. There's just like that diminishing return. It's like, no one will ever love your child like you do. And so it's that same kind of dynamic, I feel like, for me.
Yeah. I think that's funny because I think I'm the opposite, where if someone else needs me to be on a project, then I feel like I'm helping them out. And that gives me a little inspiration beyond like I'm creating something, but I'm also helping a person. And it's the combination of both that like keeps me going. Whereas if I'm doing it for myself, I wouldn't say it's burnout, but I say I get less motivated to do it.
It's like the beginning stages of burnout. Like if you were to just do that forever, like I felt not burned out, but like kind of bummed and not in like my highest self per se. After just doing like 2 months of helping on like projects. And then I did one that lasted for like 8 months. And at the end of it, I just like, I wanted to die. Like part of me was like, man, what if I just never edited again? And I, deep down, I know it's like, that's not the way. I would fail in any other industry. I feel like if I tried to just like be an accountant or I don't know what normal people do. What's a normal job? Like if I tried to be like a GM at a business, like a Hobby Lobby or a grocery store or whatever, like I could not do that. I can manage a shift, but I can't do like the whole business stuff beside that. It would just take me a lot longer to catch on to it. Whereas like in this industry, it's like, this is what makes me happy. It's like creating things, whether it's a podcast or whether it's a silly YouTube video or a live stream. Like I get pleasure from doing that stuff for me. And so in the end, that's what it ended up being. Like I just needed to take a break from helping others and help myself for just a little bit. And that's all it takes. Like, after that 6 months, all it took was like a month, maybe not even that. It might have just been like 2 weeks of like making something. And I instantly felt better.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like I'm ready to be heard again and go out and start helping people. How do you recover from that kind of stuff? Like from your burnout?
Sometimes it's like you really got to find the root of the problem. Like I said, if it's a looming thing that you're just not going to be able to forget about even on a little vacation or on a couple days off, then you really just got to solve that problem and either get it done with, like knock it out, or if it's something that you can't do it, you might have to, consider eliminating it from your life. Both of those things are not always possible for people.
Do you have an example of that? That you would be willing to share? You don't have to.
I think my dad, he's in management. That thing where his bosses will come down and be like, this, and this need done. And he's like, well, I can't get them all done. Which one would you like done? And they're like, we want them all done. It's the problem where it's like they know like he can't get it all done. He knows, but then maybe it'll just like push him to do a little bit more. So I would think something like that where you go home and you just can't separate yourself from it because you know you'll go back tomorrow and then they'll come back and be upset that it didn't get all done. How do you handle that? I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess the way I would personally handle that is I'd just take it one at a time. I would start like making lists of priorities. I work well with lists, so that's just kind of how I do things. But yeah, no, like that's a hard situation.
Yeah, no matter what you choose, it's probably going to come back to bite you in the butt. And I think that's like a real cause of this overwhelming thing is that when companies give you more than you can handle intentionally, and then you stress yourself out, and so they won't because they'll just be like, oh, they didn't get it done, but they'll come yell at you, but they won't actually be mad. Like,
yeah, so would like the knowledge of that whole like breakdown help you deal with it though? Could you in your head like break it down? It's like, well, they know I can't do this. So could that in turn help you de-stress a little bit? Or
I feel like if I knew I did everything I could, but I also feel like I would work harder during the day. Like I'd really stress about it for hours. Like, okay, who can I put here? Who can I pull from here? What can I do myself? I would like maybe like work really hard on this one project by myself, put all my team on the other project. And so I'm just like doing everything I can of the work of like 4 people.
There's an episode of Bob's Burgers like that.
Yeah.
Like, believe it or not. It's where Linda Burgers, she goes and gets a job at like a grocery store. And that exact thing happens where she just like schedules herself at like as like everything. And she's like, oh God, did I send everybody home? And now she's just doing all of the stuff and can't handle it. And so yeah, that's like, it's a tough thing to do. And that gets into like running teams and stuff. It gets hard. Because I was going to say I didn't have any experience with that, but that's not true because I used to work in fast food. I used to be an assistant manager. And that means that you get a lot of blowback from the manager. But the manager gets a ton of blowback from the owner, and it's just like this trickle down, and I just get like a shit ton.
And then you throw it on the wherever.
Yeah, well, it's like, well, and then I get blowback from like the crew because I'm running them hard because they have to run hard because I get yelled at, but then they're mad at me, and so I'm getting mad at.
You're getting bit from both, yeah.
And it's just like no matter what, I'm just kind of railed. But like with times, like they would always be like, oh yeah, you know, an order in the drive-through has to be out in a minute and a half. It's like, that's not reasonable if they're ordering like a large order or anything past like a drink or something. It's like, yeah, well, you have to do it. It's like, well, we can't. It's like, well, you have to. All the time your numbers are bad, and then all the time you get at least in our store, we'd get like a call from the owner, and then just be like, hey, what the freak, man? You freaking fricks. Your actions have consequences. And then we'd be like, okay, well, to try and get our numbers down, what we'll do is we'll put more food down so that we have more food readily available. But then our food costs go up because the more we try and prepare for it, the more we have to throw away because we don't end up with people at the right times. Yeah, dealing with that was definitely a stressor, but I was able to mostly separate myself from it because I didn't care. Like,
now, if that happens to you and you go home and say you are extra stressed, does that make you to be angrier, sadder?
I think it generally at that time came out of me in just like exhaustion. I was a little bit more of a pushover at that time where it's like I just wanted to make everybody happy. So I would just like take it and deal with it. I'd like to think I have a fairly like high patience threshold, so I was able to like deal with all of those things and get complaints and try and address them, and then a lot of times like try and fix it myself, which doesn't always work, but sometimes it's the better of the two evils when it's like either it doesn't get done or you do it yourself, and so you have to deal with that. No, at the time it was like I was tired all the time. I guess I would snap a little bit easier though, because like all of my patience was being required at work.
Yeah, because I'm the kind of person who will bottle it up, and then so when all my stress just starts like filling up, then it's like, okay, now I just take none of it. And so I just get snippy and angrier, and even my angry is not like what some people do, but I just know like for like the next like day, just everyone's just not going to be on my good side.
Yeah, and that's okay, because like it happens to everyone as long as like people kind of realize. I feel like whenever I get like that, I do my best to kind of make it up like the next time I'm out of that mood, because I'm never like in that mood and I don't know I'm in that mood, you know. It's never like, oh yeah, I guess I was kind of bitchy. It's like, oh yeah, no, I felt like an asshole. I'm gonna buy my crewmate an ice cream or do whatever like that. And you know, buying stuff doesn't always help out, but you know, just taking the time to like listen to people usually
but
helps.
If what you did was just like a little snippy or something, then you realize like, oh, I can just like make it up by acknowledging that I did something wrong.
Yeah.
If it's anything beyond that, then you might have to consider like truly apologizing.
It's like, I'm sorry, I got mad and I killed your cat.
Yeah.
Just strangled it to death.
To be fair, it did meow twice, so.
Yeah. It's just like, shut up, Mittens.
But yeah, burnout is rough, and it comes from a lot of places. And yeah, I feel like now that I'm thinking about it, I did experience it at Dillard's and stuff too. But I've also experienced it from school. And yeah, could you burn out from your own personal projects? I know that's where you kind of like find your own like relief. So I was curious if you think you could.
I don't know. I mean, I haven't experienced that yet. I did YouTube videos for a really long time when I was younger, and like the whole time just making videos fueled me to want to make more videos. So at this point I would say no, just because I haven't experienced it. But I'm not going to say that it's not in the cards like at all in the future.
Yeah, if it becomes more of a responsibility. And
it definitely like towards the end of like longer form projects, it definitely gets a little bit more strenuous. It's like, okay, we're past doing like all the big stuff. Like all the VFX are done. All of the color grading's done. Now we're just down to like really small, like, all right, we're going to cut 2 frames right there. It's like, all right, now we got to like move the music around. And now we got to do like just these all like little tiny details. That's when things start getting a little bit more stressful for me. But that also comes with the fact that I'm at a smaller, like a lower level in the field, I guess. So it's like I'm working with crews of like 2 or 3. Rather than a crew of like a bunch where I have just like tons of people who can help me out and do all these things and kind of understand and add their own flares and add their own things. And I think that's like, it might get easier dealing with that kind of stuff in the future. Then those problems will just be replaced with other problems.
Yeah, then you have to deal with the people, and if they do make the mistakes, and versus like
that's one thing I'm a little bit worried about is like getting pushback from my first like editor or whatever, or my first pushback from editors, because that's where I've started, and so that's the part that I have like the hardest time letting go of. I'm just picturing like having to deal with like someone like me for an editor. I'm easy to work with, and I will work with people, but I also know that sometimes the way I say things comes across wrong, because I've like gone back and watched videos of me like talking to people about projects, and what it is I'm passionate about it, but it just comes across as kind of cocky. Yeah, having to deal with that would definitely be a little bit tougher. And so it's interesting that I like my editing, but having to deal with an editor like me would probably suck.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think so. I think I could at this point go on forever just making stuff.
That's what I got on Burnout. And
nice.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. Feel free to check us out on YouTube and Spotify and Anchor and all these other great places. Joey, where can they do that at? It's all in the description, my good friend. It's on Twitter, it's at Humorish_TM, and on our Gmail is humorish.tm@gmail.com. If you guys ever want to help us out, send us suggestions or send us feet pics or something. I don't know what I don't know what the kids the email's pretty empty these days. I'm not gonna lie, not a whole lot of people coming in. I just want interaction, you know.
Yeah, just like, talk to me.
We're alone.
Slide in our Twitter DMs. We're just big chilling here in the studio.
Right. We don't leave this little recording room.
Yeah,
so.
We actually, every week we just sit here for a whole week and do nothing. And then an hour before the podcast, I make a pot of coffee and then we go. So we'll see you guys next week.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
I love that season 2, our outros just didn't get any better.
Nope.
They're still bad.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to this Humorish podcast. If you liked it, check out our other content. You can email your topic suggestions to humorish.tm@gmail.com. You can also find us on YouTube or on Twitter at humorish_TM, or use the hashtag NoahAsked. The podcast music was Watercolors by Vic Davy.